Hello and welcome to Where Does Fiji Fit In? Hi, I'm Paul, the guy behind DrivingMaul, and thank you very much for watching. About last year, Ben Ryan mentioned that basically what the Pacific Islands needed was a professional team and an option for the players so they could stay home and play if they wanted to. And that was how you were going to stop players from going overseas. The increase in residential qualification for national teams, etc., wasn't really going to change that. It's still about earning money for your family, which they can do from club rugby. You don't need to do it from international rugby. And by putting that 5-year residential rather than 3, what you're doing is really sweeping the problem under the carpet and just hiding it. This export of players and this exploitation of some players by some clubs in Europe. And we've seen tragic incidents such as players committing suicide because of being so unhappy at being away in Europe, and other tales of players getting themselves into trouble of one sort or another. Now, so as I say, the route forward is with having a professional team and an option not to go overseas if they don't want to. And it's about a want thing. It's not about saying they can't or shouldn't be. They should be banned from travelling, but it's giving them, those that don't want to travel, an option to do it at home. And Bill Beaumont came up with a similar thing when he was talking with Bill Pulver a week or so ago now. And so where does this professional side, that if it's in the Pacific Islands, will probably be, and the first one will probably be based in Fiji, being the most successful of the 3 in the world rankings, the largest of the 3 from an economy point of view as well. So where do they fit in? Already, or not already, soon, the Fiji will be having a side in the NRC, and that's the Australian tournament, domestic tournament. That's the equivalent of the Mitre 10 Cup in New Zealand or the Currie Cup in South Africa. Basically, it's where the non-test players get to play some rugby, and it's a development ground. So the level below Super Rugby. It includes Super Rugby players, but those that don't play international rugby, essentially. So Fiji is going to have a side there this autumn, or in European times, or this spring in the Southern Hemisphere terminology. Basically during when the Rugby Championship will be taking place. So that's his first step along that path. They're not going to get paid very well. I say it's below Super Rugby. It's not going to be comparable or a way of keeping them home from going to, say, France or England, but it is a way that they will start. It is a pathway for them for the players to develop within Fiji. The next stage is getting into one of those top level competitions. So basically the Pro 12, the Aviva Premiership, the Top 14 or Super Rugby. Now clearly the Top 14 and the Aviva Premiership aren't looking at expanding, especially not overseas anyway. So there's no real space for a Fijian side to fit in there. Also time zones and travel really do preclude that one from happening. Sorry. The Pro 12 is looking at expanding. Obviously we're looking at 2 teams potentially from South Africa joining, and then maybe the rest further down the line. Maybe in 2018 a team in America, USA, either in DC, Washington DC, or down south in Austin. Plus also potentially a team from Canada as well. There's also been talks with Germany and Georgia. But again, the time zone issue, the travel issue, mean that basically trying to put a Pacific Island team playing in Fiji in the Pro 12 would be crazy. So the only place that really fits in is in Super Rugby. The problem with that is Super Rugby at the moment is trying to contract. They have expanded already, and that's caused problems with the format and the quality of the teams that have come in. So at the moment, the Sunwolves, for example, I think are going to finish off winning 1 game this season. Whilst Jaguares started better off and have won 5, those were all in the first 6 games of the season. They've lost against lower teams recently. So the expansion hasn't worked, and they're contracting back down to 15 teams. 2 teams from South Africa are being cut, which are looking at joining the Pro 12, and 1 team from Australia needs to be cut. And that looks like that's heading towards the courts and legal action to decide which team that might be, or what level of payout is going to be required to sort that out. But basically, we're looking at they're looking at contracting, not expanding. And that contraction is probably looking at doing for at least a couple of years, taking us up to the Rugby World Cup. So in 2017, 2018, 2017 it's at 18 teams. In 2018 it'll look at going down to 15 and staying at that level probably for 2019 as well. And that's when the media rights, TV rights come up for renewal. So if Fiji were to join in a competition, A, it should be Super Rugby, and B, it doesn't look like there's going to be a space in Super Rugby until 2020 at the earliest. It's at this stage that we may have a bit of a seismic change in this top tier rugby globally, because that's when the media rights come to an end, and that's when, if South Africa wanted to extricate itself or withdraw from Super Rugby, that is when they could do it, because they've signed up and committed themselves to be in until that level, until the end of 2019. And the question then is these two teams joining the Pro 12? Is that two cut teams, or is it the first step to take all 6 teams up to the Pro 12 or up to a European competition? South Africa has been looking at trying to join a European competition for a while because of the time zone issues. They still have the travel, but if you're not covering everything because time zone so much, you don't get so much jet lag. It's much easier. It's also much better for TV rights because they can play games at a time that is good for their audience. At the moment, essentially, people in New Zealand don't watch South African games or games that are based in South Africa because of the time zones, and it'll be vice versa. South Africans will not watch a lot of the New Zealand or Australian derbies because of the time zones. It just is not conducive to them watching it. There is also quality of games issues, but that's another issue as well. So if South Africa were to leave Super Rugby, that would leave Australia, New Zealand with a team in Japan, potentially the Argentinian team, or the Argentinian team may decide to go elsewhere as well. And that at that point would create a space for a Fijian team to come in, potentially another Asian team to come in as well. There's been lots of games we played in Singapore recently, for example, and the Hong Kong national team has also gone fully pro, and South Korea has always wanted to look at stepping up as well. So there are places where it could do it. What we really need to see from Super Rugby is some foresight. Once they've got over this contraction, because at the moment clearly they've got enough on their plates just trying to get rid of 3 teams, they need to figure out what is their view for the next X years. It is being good to hear from some of the noise out of Australia that whilst they are shrinking and whilst they have made an absolute dog's breakfast of it, the reason they're looking at contracting is because they're looking at that next media rights deal and the quality of content and how many people are watching, rather than looking at things now. So at least they are looking ahead of time, even if it is only 2 years or 3 years. I'd like to see them, Sansar, actually come up with where they want to be in 10 years' time, and then look at heading there. If you want to have a team from Fiji joining in 2020, start now. Now there could be, maybe that is what's happening with the NRC team, and that could be then they can start putting structures in. They can start building the financial relationships they need around sponsorship, around selling corporate packages, and then look at sort of stepping that up for Super Rugby. If they want to put in that Singapore team, yes, they're playing games there now, so they're trying to build up the fan base. They're also trying to build up the corporate sales and stuff. But these are things that I'd like to see them have a plan about bringing a team in, not tender it out and go 1 year beforehand, spend 6 months tendering it out, and then give the team give the organisation that puts that team together no time to get their act together, which is what has really happened with the Sunwolves and why we've had 2 wasted seasons of them playing, essentially. So there you go. The place for Fiji is, or a Pacific Island professional team is in Super Rugby. The time frame is 2020 at the earliest. They need to start putting the building blocks in place now. That's my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. Also, please give this a thumbs up on YouTube, share it on Twitter, and don't forget to sign up for my newsletter. The link is down below.